Hello everyone, I'm joined here today by Angela Hollington, the elementary principal of the Canadian International School in Singapore, and Emilijia Stojanovski, the literacy coordinator. Is that right, Emilijia?
Yes.
Okay, great. And they've been on a very interesting journey this past year, and they're here to share with us today a little bit about that, so that others out there, teachers and administrators, can get some tips and ideas about how they can implement these ideas in their own schools. So hello ladies, welcome.
Hi, Francesca.
Hi. Angie, if I can start with you, following on from doing our principals course last year, what's been the biggest takeaway that you've had, and what was your first priority after that?
Well, after doing the course, I realised that we were looking at our ELL learners in the wrong way. What we'd been doing was taking the children out of the classes, filling them up with English and putting them back in, and that just wasn't working. This, coupled with the fact that 67% of our students are non-native speakers, and we were getting more and more children into our classes that were ELL beginners, and it just wasn't possible to carry on with that type of approach. So learning about the BML approach, where we're actually teaching literacy through the content and working with our ELL teachers in another way, supporting the planning of the curriculum and adapting it for their needs, we decided to have a totally different approach. What I was finding was our literacy levels were not where they should be, understandably, given that so many students were learning English, and we needed to do better. So we decided to actually change the timetable, so we had an 80-minute block every day of teaching literacy. So teachers were required to teach literacy at the same time across the grade levels. Now, this meant that we could group students and really focus on their needs. Plus, we decided that we really needed to teach reading specifically. A lot of our teachers were teaching reading in the earlier grades, in the lower grades rather, but in the upper grades that wasn't happening. They weren't specifically teaching vocabulary, for example, which, as we know, is really important. They weren't teaching strategies. So our students were picking things up, but they weren't being specifically taught. So we decided to change the timetable. I decided to find a literacy coordinator who'd be responsible just for the literacy in the school, looking at where we were and moving it forward. So we were really focusing on this because we have a Chinese bilingual program and a French bilingual program, as well as the English program. So our school is quite focused on languages, but we weren't doing it as well as we could. So employed Emilijia, who came to us and has done an absolute amazing job, and changed the way we did things, trained the teachers. Well, Emilijia trained the teachers, and we made it quite specific what our expectations were. And it's made a huge difference. All the teachers in the school took the teachers course, and that made a huge difference too, because we were all speaking the same language, so to speak. But we were all talking about bilingual and multilingual learners, whereas in the past we talked about English language learners. And the way that the change sort of happened overnight in the classrooms, with the teachers saying, oh, it's okay to let the children talk about these concepts in Chinese, and then let them work in English. But they've got the ideas to incorporate the parents to say, okay, this is what we're going to be working on, talk about this in the native language, and then when they come to school, they'll have had a heads up. So all these different techniques were sort of implemented within the classrooms, and now it's across the school. So it's a given. This is what we have to do. And I think trying to put a new program in place only happens if teachers really understand why we're doing it. And they realised that we weren't reaching these English language learners, and we actually had to do something. So when we did something which required a lot of training, a lot of changes, which is, we know change is not always the easiest thing to put in place, they saw that this is a real need. And so that's how it happened.
That's wonderful. That's really good. And I think as you say, change isn't easy, but I think if teachers see the results.
Right.
And I think that's what we want to talk about with you, Emilijia, is, we know the reading about the research says that on BMLs, it says that daily literacy focus is key. So can you tell us now a little bit more about what steps you actually put in place as the literacy coordinator? So Angela hired you, quite rightly, knowing that there was a big need, and the biggest focus is training to let teachers know, because if they don't know, they don't know, we've got a battle in our hands. And then we're bringing you on board. What was the big thing you had to do first of all, and then kind of funnel it down?
Yeah. So what I started doing first is actually there was kind of conversations going around the school based on the teachers that have taken the BML course from before. So there was already some awareness, and I decided to use that. So I read the research, I read the book, I read all of that, and then I found the pages about literacy specifically and what I could use to kind of introduce the next thing. What are some things that we need to do in our school? So in there you suggested the importance of leveled reading, going all the way in the upper grades as well. So I use that actually to start the conversations about the importance of guided reading. So guided reading means explicit and systematic teaching of reading. And then I started from there. We've trained all the teachers, but before I trained them, we actually had to do one more step. So we decided to follow a framework of where we assess the needs of each child in the school in general. So accurate assessments were step number one. Then decide based on the data what we need to do and group the students effectively, and then provide targeted instruction. So what we did was we implemented an assessment, a reading assessment in place. We put a reading assessment in place that's a benchmark, and then based on that, we decided, okay, these students are reading at this reading level, these students are reading at this reading level, and so on. And based on that, we formed groups, so guided reading groups that are flexible, 4 to 6 students. And then based on that, we were then able to provide guided reading support. Then the training for guided reading was actually something that was a big step and a big mindset shift for teachers as well, because there was a lot of asking, there was a lot of reminding, there was a lot of telling students what they were supposed to do or assigning tasks, but there wasn't enough of explicit teaching happening. So I think that was the biggest shift, and that was the biggest thing that was kind of the focus of the guided reading training, is to make sure that teachers understood, you need to teach this. It's not enough to be asking a question or to be reminding, you need to make a connection. You need to show them how to make a connection. You need to model it, and then you need to support them while they're trying to implement that in an appropriately leveled text. So that's kind of what we did, and then based on that, we saw the need to implement more supports, to put more supports in place. So I trained also other support staff in the school so that they're able to support the lowest kids, which in some cases were our BMLs, but in other cases it was just students that haven't had effective instruction before. So we put those together and we provided support for them as well. So our supports were quite intense. But I know that results are very important, and teachers need to see quick results so that an initiative starts. So I selected grade 1 to be the target grade level, just because you could see results very quickly in there. So what we did is we started with guided reading somewhere beginning of October, end of September, beginning of October. And then by mid-November, we noticed there was a significant increase in the number of students who were working on grade level. So then also we just recently did the retesting on the MAP test. We've taken it once in August and now again in January. And what we noticed is the grade 1 students have performed in the 97th percentile in terms of their growth. So that's pretty amazing in the 4 months that we've had with breaks and interruptions in the school year. But it's getting there. And I feel like in the upper grades we've made good progress as well. But it's especially evident in the lower grades just because we don't have as many gaps. So it's easy for us to see the growth in there.
Yeah, because it's so incremental, little steps. They can go from, the early reading levels, E, D, F, G. You can see that quite quickly. Whereas once you get up to the higher levels, there's not so much of a a spurt between S, T, and U levels in, guided reading levels, Fontes, Pinnell, that's what I use.
Yeah, and we also needed to work on that as well to kind of convince teachers a little bit more about the importance of explicit teaching in the upper grades as well, because once the students make that shift and now they're fluent readers, they know how to decode. That does not mean that they understand the text, or even if they understand, doesn't mean that they are able to understand complex text.
Yeah.
So did a lot of work around having teachers understand that strategy or reading strategy is something that you apply once you read a challenging text. It's not something that you apply once you read an easy text. So I had actually teachers read some articles and write down all the strategies that they were using as a fluent adult reader, so that I could bring awareness. Okay, well, these are the things, these are the strategies that you're applying right now because this is challenging text for you. This is what your kids need to do in your grade 5 or grade 6 classroom. And that was kind of the point where they realized, oh, I really need to continue conversations with the students and explicit teaching of reading strategies in the upper grades as well with fluent readers. So I think they were able to understand that as well.
I think that's the key, actually. I think that you've raised a very big important point, is actually teaching the strategies in the upper elementary. I think once children shift from, that point where they're learning to read, from reading to learn, teachers very often are trained the children can go to the library now, they pick up, Roald Dahl, and then they can move on with that. And you just have to listen to them now and again. But I think with our BMLs, we can't assume that. And that's what's really important. We just have to keep that explicit teaching going. I mean, I always recommend right up into middle school, even. This journey doesn't stop.
Yeah. So what we noticed actually, and we're continuing with our literacy supports, but the students that have the BICs and they're kind of exited from the ELO program, they're the ones that normally struggle in the mainstream classroom. So that's why we kind of intensified supports, especially in the upper grades, for those students who are like phase or level 4 on the WIDA, and now they've been exited out of the ELO program. We really pay attention to that,
we need to
sure they can really continue to get that literacy support, and they have that in place so that they could continue to develop. Otherwise, we've noticed based on the data that there is a risk for them to kind of stay at that level.
They plateau, right? Angie, I just want to point out to people who may be watching this, just how big is your school? Because the job that Emilijia and you have done, you're not talking about one class per grade level here, right? Which would be quite an easy job. Just tell them how big your school is.
Last count was 1,672.
Wow. You're
just fire alarms. Amazing.
So you have about 10 classes per grade level.
Right. Yeah.
So when you're saying, I mean, this is what's even more amazing about what you've actually done, both of you. We should make a little medal and give it to you guys, because you've
not me teaching reading.
No, but you knew, you highlighted a point and a need, and you got in there and you did it, and you knew you had to do it whole school, and this had to be a whole school thing. And it had to be right from the very beginning. It had to be, listen, it comes from the top and it filters down here so that this is happening. And everybody, as you say, everyone did the training so that all the school is on board with the new research and the approach, rather than looking at the children as ELLs and they're not up to scratch. It's our BMLs, and what do we do?
Right, and I think, when I had my one-on-ones with the teachers, I'd say, what are the issues in the school? And they all said, literacy. What do we do with the children who are learning English? We don't have enough ELL teachers, and that's looking at it from the fact that the ELL teachers are going to fix this, and it's very clear we need to do something more, and it was a whole school literacy change, and that's exactly what's happened. But as I say, it came from the teachers. They recognised the need. They were saying, help us, what are we going to do? And when you came out to see us, and the teachers were interested, and then they actually wanted to take the course. I mean, it wasn't a requirement, but I think 70 people took it the first round, and then that was it. And then they started to work in study groups, and then someone said, "Oh, I haven't got enough time to do it." And they said, "Well, we'll help you. We'll work as a team." So it was very much, although it was like, here's a great idea, the teachers owned it because they really saw the need for something that they needed to do.
That's great.
It's not an easy endeavor. So it's definitely it has to be a team approach. So I've been in situations where I had to do everything, but in this environment, I feel like it had to be a literacy initiative to be successful. So that's why, in terms of support with finances, in terms of support with obtaining the right resources or getting the right coverage, or reshuffling people so that I'm able to train them to provide supports and stuff like that. That's all. It all had to be coordinated.
Yeah, it is a job for a team, right? That's why I think it's so important, your role, Angie, because you were the one that realized your staff are at a certain requirement, they're needing help with illiteracy, and you said, right, okay, you got yourself a literacy coordinator, you bought tremendous amount of resources. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of guided reading books you have now within all your so you did that, you got that budget together, and then, as you say, Emilijia, when you're trying to cover people and help people to do trainings, Angie, you've got the budget for the schedule, so you know who's there, who's available, and who's not. So it really is a team effort to get. But as you say, Emilijia, you've been doing it since really after the training. You've really been doing it since October, right? And now this October, November, December, January, February. So 4 or 5 months later, including the holidays, you're seeing tremendous growth, and I think that's what we want to share.
Yeah. It's outstanding growth. I mean, we actually looked at the figures and that cannot be. But I mean, you see the children every day. You go around and at a certain time, grade ones are getting their guided reading, and you see them all there, and it's bound to happen when that happens every day, and also it's changing the culture of this is important to us. This is how are you getting on with your guided reading? How's it going? Show me your reading books, and it's that sort of thing that we're trying to develop.
Yeah, and it embeds. What I find later on is you have these young children in the elementary, all trained up on their independent level. They know where they are in reading, and they're not happy or shy to say to you, listen, I don't know this or I don't know that. And they know that teachers are skilled enough to be able to say, well, I can take you to the next level. So the teachers know what to do. And then you really develop this kind of love of reading that goes on for children all the way through high school and into life.
And training was also key, just to kind of create that common vocabulary between teachers, because before I would ask, well, how is he doing in reading? And I would get something like, oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't tell me anything.
That's right.
Now that we have, okay, you say GRA 12 or you say FNP, I don't know, M or whatnot, then we're speaking the same language. So I think that was the whole purpose in having a common reading assessment, is to kind of establish the common language between the teachers, and also what are the things, what are some of the next steps, what are some of the things that the students need to be working on. So really being specific, because all of those assessments actually tell you what are the strengths of the student, what are the areas in need of improvement. So we have all of that for each student, and then based on that, it's not just the level, we're actually looking in their areas in need of improvement, and that's how we group students. And again, those groups are flexible, so students are constantly moved around the groups, not because just based on their needs. So it's not something that's, okay, you're in this group and you're going to stay in here forever. It's actually, you've moved up, so you will go to this group now. Yeah. And we're doing that quite a few times a year with the additional supports that we're providing as well. So
that's great. Sorry to interrupt you, but so you feel teachers are fully on board?
Yes, and I think the biggest thing that has helped quite a lot is getting the right resources to be able to do this. So we tried, actually, we've started doing it since November, but it was difficult because we didn't have the right resources in the school. We didn't have enough guided reading books. We didn't have all of that. So there were a lot of things logistically that we needed to put in place to make it happen, like starting from building cupboards to store the books.
Yeah, find space for them. Yeah.
Labeling, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? We wanted to also create easy access to the guided reading books. So instead of storing them in one central location, our school is huge, so we decided to put them within the grade level space. So we had to really think carefully about all of those things so that the teachers could have ownership over the process. They were not our books, they're your books. They're checked out to you. You guys are responsible for that. You will manage it. So I think that contributed a lot. And now they really take good care of the books. Teachers had lessons with the kids about how to show respect to the new resources.
Oh, lovely.
And it's really nice to
Oh, that is lovely. Well, Angie, what would you say to teachers who say to you, oh, I don't have time in my day-to-day teaching to put reading and writing at the core? I mean, what would you suggest?
I would say reading and writing is at the core of everything they do anyway. So it's actually a non-negotiable. They have to. I mean, our kids, we teach in an inquiry way. They need to be able to read and write, to inquire, and to discover, and they just need it. It's essential, and it's not fair not to give that to them. Actually, I mean, I really feel that we assume that kids will learn by osmosis. They don't. They learn a lot of things by osmosis, maybe. But writing has to be taught properly. They need those building blocks. They have to have them, especially being an English learner. So, I would say to teachers, okay, this is a non-negotiable. And, when we put this in, a lot of teachers said, well, I like to do this through inquiry and, we can teach it through. Yes, you can. You can teach literacy through inquiry. You can. But it doesn't negate the fact that they actually need specific skills. They have to have those skills. And, we have seen the results now. So it's important.
I know, it's wonderful.
Yeah. And I was going to just expand on that a little bit, that actually the new definition of literacy says that literacy is the way of interpreting the world. It's not just basic reading and writing. It's actually more than that. It's like once you're able to read and write, you're able to interpret the world, right? So if we go by that definition, that literacy is at the core of everything we do. Literacy also in content areas would mean, I need to be in the habit of mind of a scientist or a mathematician to be able to do this. So literacy kind of goes beyond all of those boundaries of just reading and writing. And then also we had another challenge that we've had while we tried to implement this was the misconception around inquiry, where teachers felt that inquiry was only if it was discovery based learning, whereas there is guided inquiry actually, and all the official documents are saying that literacy should be taught primarily through guided inquiry. So it is out there. It's just somehow it's getting misinterpreted. So those were some of the things the challenges that we've faced.
Fabulous. That is so fabulous. Well, I just want to thank you both for taking the time to share the wonderful work that you're doing, and just to see that progress in such a short time, I think will give other schools the injection to think, well, we can do this too, because you're an enormous school. We're not just talking about a little village school with 200 or 300 kids. You wish. So thank you very much, ladies. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Nice to talk to you. Bye, Francesca.
Bye.
Bye.